Hey, Michael. Hey, everybody.
Hello.
It's a holiday, but we're recording this anyway. So, nice. Let's just jump in, okay? Hello and welcome to Python Bytes, where we deliver Python news and headlines directly to your earbuds. This is episode 481, recorded May 25th, May 25th, 2026, not 1926. And I am Brian Ocken.
I'm Michael Kennedy.
And this show is sponsored by us. Check out the all the Talk Python training courses, the PyTest course. And thanks to Patreon supporters, and also we've both written books. So check out books also. And I have a little bit of news on the Lean TDD later.
We both have something fresh for people that if they want to support us, they can check it out.
Something fresh, yeah. You can if you've got suggestions or. If you've got complaints, send them to Michael. But if you have suggestions, send them to either of us. And the info is on the show notes, but it's we're on Mastodon and Blue Sky and all the places. So also, if you're listening to this and would like to see what we look like or watch the stuff or show up live, you can go to pythonbytes.fm/live, where there's a link to join the audience. And during the recording, a lot of people sometimes drop in questions and we'll answer them on the show. That's fun. And lastly, you don't have to take notes because all of the links are in the show notes, but the links and extra information are sent out in an email newsletter. So you can subscribe at pythonbytes.fm, and we will send you a whole bunch of information. If you don't quite understand what we're talking about, there's some background information there too that will fill you in. With that, let's talk about something dumb.
Dumb ways to die. Dumb ways for open source projects to die. Oh, and let me count the ways. This one is by Andrew Nesbitt. It's an article. It's a taxonomy, I suppose, is the way you would put it. It's pretty interesting. I think it creates some interesting ways to talk about and think about just open source projects and supply chain, mostly not security, although a little bit security, but also just stability, right? Yeah. So this taxonomy is broken into a two-level tree. So there's things like the maintainer left, and the maintainer's still there. Sabotage and capture, the release pipeline broke, and so on. And for each one of those, there's a bunch of sub-items that are really good. So for the maintainer left, I'll give you a couple of them. They're all pretty interesting. So I won't read the whole article, but I'll read off a few of them so you'll get the sense and you can come back and use this as a resource. So under the maintainer left, we have the ghost maintainer, the simple and most common case. The last human commit is some years ago. Issues are accumulating unanswered. The repo is not archived, so it doesn't show up in any filter that would flag it. Usually the maintainer just moved on and it wasn't important enough to formally hand it over or shut it down. And it goes on a bit. And by the way, Andrew references this Weekend at Bernie research he did, and basically went through different packaging platforms or services or whatever, like PyPI or NPM and so on, and said which one of these are in active state, a dormant state, a dead state, unknown, and has a % dead. And PyPI actually has a very low % dead. Conda is better. Maven is better, but everything else is worse, like quite a few others. So that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, it goes up there at like 20%.
So. I know, that's crazy, right? So it's kind of like, let's take those and then categorize them. So we went through and did a bunch of research on these and said, okay, well, why is it dead? What ways can it be dead? So there's they ghosted, right? The maintainer just ghosted. It's fine. There could be the corporate orphan. A company built and open sourced it with a team to run it and then pivoted or laid off the people and nobody updated it because they're fired. That's an interesting one. There's the thesis orphan. I created this project as a PhD or master's thesis, and then I graduated, and I'm done. I'm not messing with it anymore. Actually didn't enjoy it anyway. Funding cliff, similar, like it has a grant or an NSF grant or something like that. And then when the money's gone, stop, and so on. Let's go on to the next category. So this one's also really common. The maintainer's still there, but there's the burnout plateau. Still active by any metric you'd run. Typo fixes and dependency bumps get merged with the occasional thanks on an issue, but anything that needs actual design work or serious debugging is open indefinitely because they're just done. Custody battle. 2 maintainers fighting over it. Toxic gatekeeping. The person in charge of it is just doesn't really want to maintain it, but hostile to all new incoming work.
That happens a lot, I think, actually.
Yeah, I think so. There's the sabotage and capture. Captured maintainer. Commit or publish access ends up with someone hostile. XZ is an elaborate version. Remember that 2-year social engineering campaign that eventually talked that person into letting the person take over, but they were actually a state actor, we believe. That isn't where. And then we've also covered the protest where. This is bad. Seems to be more JavaScript, but there it is. The legitimate maintainer deliberately breaks their own package. Colors and Faker were sabotaged by their author in 2022. Left pad was unpublished entirely. Remember that one was pretty bad.
That was funny.
Why is there an entire package that just left pads a string? Like that's all it does. That's just too fine-grained, people. All right, the release pipeline broke, bunch of stuff around that. Force majeure, like sanctions. Some people's accounts have been shut down or blocked because they've been frozen under export controls or other things like that, or taken down because of DMCA. The world moved on. This one we know well from the Python world. The platform got stranded, like chained to an end-of-the-life runtime. Python 2 only, or requires a certain node version or whatever. And related to that is the transitive death. So the project's fine, the maintainer's present willing, but something 2 or 3 levels down in its own dependency tree can't be swapped out without a rewrite. Like think Python 2, right? Why did a lot of stuff not upgrade to Python 3? Because something it depended upon was Python 2 only, and so there's no way to get there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
API rug pull, I've seen this. Like, hey, I wrote something that wraps, like let's say the Reddit's API or Twitter API, and then those APIs go away, and guess what? Your app or library doesn't work, or it's just superseded, right? Like, there's no reason to do a thing if it's now part of the language or something like that. Project split, yeah, that's pretty much it. Licensing. So, what do you think? That's pretty neat, right?
Yeah, and one of the things that's unfortunate is because of a lot of the open source. I don't know that there's a lot of projects, or there at least have been enough projects that has been painful, that have had a lot of users, and like something happened and it's not maintained anymore, and there isn't a really good way to transition away or to something else, and it gets messy. I mean, I had a like even at work we had a project that we were depending on that was Python 2 only, and it's one of those things of like we could have thrown money at it and just had a corporate entity could convert it, but we waited until some university students did it. But nice. That seems dumb. Why not throw money at it? I think for a lot of these,
you could just pay the person. Hey, I know it's on this old version, but would $5,000 make it work on the new version too? A lot of times people say, heck yeah.
Or
I've wanted to do it, but I don't have the time and energy, right?
Or get your own people to do the conversion work. To take it over. But
honestly, I'd rather see companies support the maintainers and get it upgraded. But if that's not an option, Claude could probably upgrade it too.
Well, I mean, in the case where like somebody just moved on, they're not interested in the project anymore.
Yeah,
throwing money at them is probably not the right option. So
yeah, that's true. It depends on the situation. I'll give you 2 examples of these in the Python space that both make me say, well, one's in the front end CSS space, is Bulma. I really like Bulma. Super cool project. It sells itself as a modern CSS framework and all these things, but
yeah.
Let's see, when was the last release? Oh yeah, about 1.5 years ago.
Really?
Yeah,
weird.
Which is really sad. Like there was a commit for something super, like So I think this is an absolute telltale sign of this. So people out there thinking about projects they want to depend upon, this is a mega sign for it. So 3 months ago, the maintainer of this fixed issue 4000. What is issue 4000? The footer has a broken logo on the website.
Okay.
Meanwhile, it's got 50,000 GitHub stars, 4,000 forks. And that's fine. Like this guy, he doesn't owe the world anything. If he built it, it's amazing. I actually use this. I love Bulma, and I decided to keep using it even though it's basically dead in the water, because I looked around at all the other stuff. It's like Tailwind, but way less complicated. And it's going to keep working. And, in 5 years, I'll find something else. But right now,
I could see it though. So like you got 10 minutes to, maybe you got a half an hour on the weekend to work on it. You open this up and you see 346 issues and 175 pull requests. I just close my laptop and go outside and mow the lawn or something.
I know. No, I know. And so the guy doesn't owe the world anything. Like, he created something cool, and that's fine. He doesn't have to do. But here's something that bugs me, and I would just like to put this out there for people. And if I have projects like this, I consider myself the same. I have nothing of this scale. But for example, if I go to the pull request section, I understand what you're saying, Brian. Like, oh God, there's so much work here. But he should put some kind of message that says, hey, listen, I just can't right now. So please don't submit any PR. I don't go do work that I won't even look at. So if you look at the PRs, like there's one on February 20th, one on January 20th, and there's 175 PRs without even a response to them. Going back, way, I don't know, how far do they go back? You got a page to it, right?
There's
like
7
2018.
pages.
You know what I mean? And so I just feel like it kind of bugs me that there's all these people out in the world go, oh, I'm going to help improve this project. I'm going to add the view CLI. Like, no, you're not, because it's not going to get responded to, and so on. And also there's 36 people sponsoring the project, like paying money monthly to support it. Like, I just feel like at some point you're like, just please use it, please enjoy it, but don't do extra work to it, because I'm not in a space where I want to or able to work on this right now. I don't know. What are you thinking on that?
Well, I think that sometimes you're optimistic when you originally write up a contributor guideline, but need to update it to say, yeah, I'm not going to accept contributions, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. I think one sentence on the README, like, hey, look, I just can't, like a big bold, I can't right now, folks. So please just hold your thoughts, and so on. Because anyway, so the other one is disk cache, which I use and love. But
what? That's abandoned?
Last commit 2 years ago.
Maybe it just works though.
Yeah. But here's the thing. Well, I mean, there's 20 pull requests, 50 issues, no responses. The guy Grant, I don't know him. I don't know his background, but I noticed that he was hired by OpenAI almost exactly just a little bit after the last release. So he's just, I don't know if this was captured in the taxonomy, but it is actually, I can't remember which one, but there's one of them where, hey, if you get hired at a company that doesn't let you do open source, your project's kind of de facto die unless you can get someone else to do it. You know what I mean? So,
or you did open source to try to be well known enough to get hired by OpenAI, and
I'm not saying it's a negative outcome. I'm probably it's an amazing outcome for Grant. So that's congrats to him. And again, he doesn't know the world anything. I think this is a little bit different because it's really a wrapper on SQLite, and SQLite is constantly being maintained and updated. So I feel less worried about it. Anyway, dumb ways for open source projects to die. There's just 2 examples. I think this is important, especially for newcomers to open source and Python. When you add something to your project as a requirement, you should know the consequences of doing that, right?
Yeah. I want to add one more thing. There are a lot of packages that really don't need that many updates. Even if they have issues in pull requests, they might be just maybe the maintainer's not that great at saying, I don't feel like it or something. But one way to keep it to keep it noted that it's alive is once a year update your tests to the new Python version. then it's at least a year old, and you know it's being tested on the latest Python, and that's the bare minimum, I think. So
Yeah. Change your classifier. What are those
Yeah.
things called? Anyway, your classifier to just say newer. Take out the old Python, put it in the new Python, something like that. And your classifier and you're good to go. Yeah. But projects can be done. They definitely can be done. It's just they don't need more changes. But I think it's all pretty interesting. But
all right.
let's take us on to more packaging talk.
Yeah. Okay. So I wanted to talk. This is a brief one, but this is a Tim Hopper article on how to create a PyLock TOML file, and I just kind of forgot that these were sort of rolling in at different times. And as of May now of 2026, there's now 3 ways to create these guys. So he covers using UV, pip, and PDM, and notes that UV is the only one that says it's in stable status. The pip lock PyLock TOML generation is experimental, and so is PDM experimental. I didn't know PDM did it, but I'm not really a PDM user. But just sort of running down how to create lock files with all of these tools, and it's kind of just a general neat tutorial with the recommendation of why not just use UV because it works. But the incantation's a little magic. It's UV export -- format PyLock TOML with an output of PyLock TOML. Seems redundant.
I wonder if I think there's a global config for UV. I wonder if you could put that in there.
Maybe
That'd be interesting. I don't know.
And if you he also has apparently a companion page of how to install, and the how to install is the short version is use -r because all the tools treat it like a requirements file. So not completely interesting. No deps. No deps. No dependencies. Huh. Okay. Anyway, just creating PyLock TOML files. It's kind of the way we're moving. So that's it.
It sure is very interesting. Now, let's talk about Lifeguard. So Lifeguard, we've talked about.
It's a good summer topic.
Exactly. A lot of places, at least in the U.S., the public pools open on Memorial Day, and all the lifeguards go back to work, and you need a lifeguard job, and it's often a rite of passage of high school to work as a lifeguard. So this works for lazy imports. Remember, lazy imports are coming in Python, which is going to be really nice. And I was pretty interested in them before, but then I did that and I wrote it up, said we talked about it here, cutting Python web app memory by 31%. A lot of that had to do with imports and changing imports and only using heavyweight libraries when they actually executed the code that needed them. But, so lazy imports, good, I think. However, lazy imports also can have incompatibilities and other issues. So this Lifeguard library will go through and find those issues. I don't know it's kind of an interesting juxtaposition. It has 56 GitHub stars, so it's kind of like brand new, which is fine. It's just like a linter type thing made by Facebook. So it's probably something that Meta used internally and they just open sourced, a couple of months ago. So that's all good. Looks like it is a Rust-based thing because it has a cargo folder. And that was 2 months ago when it was created. I don't know when it actually came out public on GitHub, right? Because you can have a private repo and then flip it to public at some point. Anyway, it says, what are lazy points? We talked about that, imports. But it says why, the idea is obviously, especially in large code bases, this both increases startup time and lowers memory usage, which is great. However, sometimes it doesn't work because there's certain Python patterns that require these things to execute immediately. So module level side effects, like a module that registers a handler or modifies global state at import time will behave differently if its import is deferred. Think about something that sets systat at exit, right? So it wants to run some code at exit to unravel something, but that's only there if you call the function that causes the lazy import to load and so on, right? As opposed to the way it does now. The registry pattern, so dependency injection, I'm guessing. A module registers itself, adding it to a global dict that will, when imported, will silently fail under lazy imports. Sys.modules modules manipulations. Code that reads and writes sys.modules modules assumes that prior imports have already executed. Okay, interesting. And meta classes. Class creation side effects may depend on. So you can just run this against your project and it'll tell you how safe are your lazy imports. And if you can't be lazy, it's a lifeguard. Looks out for you so you don't, I guess, drown in lazy imports.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, I just want to put that out there for people because this is coming in Python 3.15, and it's always better to go, hey, let's test our package or our application on this new version before it's actually released, especially if you have a package other people use, right?
Yeah. And I guess I think like testing is often pretty safe to do lazy imports. So I just want to throw out, I don't have a link or anything, but a reminder to people that if you're loading something fairly large for testing purposes and you have a big suite, you can throw that into a conf test or not a conf test. Well, you could do it in a conf test, but you can throw the import into a fixture and even an auto use fixture, and it'll load at runtime instead of test collection time then. So it's a lot faster.
Yeah, that's very good. If you're focused on just some category test or something like that, you don't have to do it.
Yeah.
All right. Let's log it.
Let's log it. So I ran across this article called choosing a Python logging library in 2026. And this just kind of came up at the right time because I've got a project that I'm switching to use. My plan is to switch it to use Loguru. I don't know. Loguru. And but so I was looking at this just because it's interesting. So the comparison is the straight logging module, struct log, Loguru, logbook, and Pico logging. And it looks like they sort of kind of gave up on some of those, but one of the interesting things about using straight logging was that doing structured output like JSON, logging JSON information, is a little bit difficult. So their recommendation right off the bat is to use a project called Python JSON Logger, which I didn't know about, which you can use with the standard logging module, and it just makes logging easier. They even have the same people that wrote the original article have a setup guide, a practical guide to setting up the JSON logger. So that's cool, and especially I was thinking especially for API endpoints or entry points or whatever, that's important. But we use JSON all over the place. So, just talking about comparing them all, and they didn't really give an example. They actually talked about they have examples, but they didn't recommend anything. The recommendation really was use the standard logging module unless you have a reason not to, because it's being supported everywhere. But I really liked the Loguru example of just how easy it looks to set up. And we've covered this before, but especially if you have a lot of people that are, logging kind of looks complicated, and if you've got a small team that all understand it, that's great. But if you have a large team, it might be easier just to have an easier logging system, and that's where I'm kind of leaning. And the setting up JSON output, you can say serialize equals true. Now I don't know. I think that means that converts every log record to a JSON output. So that might not be. It's not logging JSON stuff. It's actually the output is a JSON thing, so you can read it somewhere else, which also might be kind of cool. But I probably won't do that.
You could have two logs. You could set up a logger to a file that logs without serialize and one that logs. Right. So you have like a parallel, like a structured and an unstructured version. And when you just say log, it just hits all the attached
Yeah.
destinations or whatever.
But the easy setup is what I'm looking for. But there are some caveats. Like it's harder to have multiple loggers apparently, or at least multiple configurations of different loggers. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what the article says. The one of the things that I didn't know about with this is that there's a logger catch and a logger exception. So there's different ways. The logger catch is a decorator to log exceptions nicely or into whatever log file you have set up. Or a logging stream or whatever. And that looks neat because usually, my goal is no exceptions, but if there is an exception, be able to,
Yeah.
it might be nice to look at that. Anyway, kind of a good rundown of what the logging libraries look like right now and now how to do structured output. There was a performance benchmark, which was interesting, that it compared the standard lib plus the JSON stuff with struct log and Loggeroo, and Loggeroo is about the same as the standard lib with JSON, and struct log is about twice as fast as in some cases. So that's interesting. So
Cool. I use Loggeroo by default these days. I really like it, but I've also used Logbook. I don't really use the built-in logging. It just seems more complicated than needed to me.
I've been doing the built-in logging mostly lately, and I figured, once I figure out like and I think I'm like with a lot of people that use it, I figured out one way that works for me, and I just copy and paste and do that. So.
Yep.
All right. Well, those are our items. Do you have any extras you want to talk about?
Sure do. I sure do. Hold on. I have two fun things. So first of all, let's do it in this order. So a while ago, I told everyone that I have German subtitles available for all 283 hours of courses over at TalkPython training, the courses we got. Well, now we have Spanish as well. So I'm very excited to announce, if Spanish is your language and you want Spanish subtitles to accompany the English spoken version, well, click on Espanol and you'll be good to go right there. How about that?
That's cool.
It only took 2.5 weeks of just grinding on translations to get it done, but there it is. I think it's going to be really great.
So you have German and Spanish now? Is that
German and Spanish.
okay? Nice.
And now I'm working on Portuguese. Actually, I've done a lot of research, and I feel like Portuguese will be the most beneficial for the tech folks. Because you got to intersect. You got to look at two things. You got to look at how confident is the group of people who speak a certain language in English, right? So, for example, German. I did German first because I speak some German, so I could kind of spot check it a little bit, and it made some sense to me, But German people are pretty good at English, especially tech-oriented ones. And so I was looking around, and it turns out that I think Portuguese people are a little less comfortable with English than maybe German folks, or I don't know, French. So I'm like, all right, then subtitles in their native language would be more helpful than not. So anyway, that's the kind of thing I'm trying to balance. So Portuguese is next. Apparently there's a lot of, like, Python is super popular in Brazil and other places. So excited for that.
Cool.
All right, so that's one. Spanish subtitles, not Portuguese, but Portuguese maybe in 3 or 4 weeks, something like that. And a brand new course. I'm super excited about this. Python Web Security is the course. And it comes in two components. The OWASP top 10. So it goes through every one of the OWASP top 10 categories with 2 to 3 examples, sometimes in Flask, sometimes in Django, sometimes in Fast API, the bad version, the good version, just purely learning the security issues. And then we turn it into an agentic AI course and start searching for bugs in your own code using agentic AI. So we talked about how Mozilla found a bunch of bugs with Claude, similar to that, with some really custom OWASP and Python web app focused things.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So if you're publishing web apps or APIs on the internet, you definitely want to look at this because
Yeah.
it basically gives you tooling and a blueprint on how to completely check your app for OWASP violations and beyond using things like Claude Code and others. So you can, instead of hiring pen testers, you can do a first pass with this and then maybe find just a few more things if you're that kind of company that can afford $25,000 or whatever for a pen test, or you could at least do this if you were going to do nothing. So I think it's really helpful.
That's cool. Nice.
Yep. Thanks. All right. That's it for me.
Okay. I noticed this. There's an article that was on what, NPR or Planet Money, but I noticed it because on Blue Sky, a shout out to where I got the information from, if my tabs work, Savannah Ostrowski. So posted this, said it was surprising. This is a disturbing article, actually. It's what happened to women in computer science, and I didn't realize this was going on so long. So basically, modern computer science is dominated by men. The percent of women in computer science was, and also in the percent compared with other fields like other physical sciences, law school, medical school. So it's an interesting comparison. But in the mid 80s, it was at its height at like 36% or something were women, and it's just been going down since then. And it's leveled off in the around 2008 or something like that. But this isn't good. And so I think we need more women in computer science, and the analysis of this was really thought that this was because of the personal computers showing up in homes, and I guess families and teachers encouraging boys to play with computers more than they taught girls, and also a commentary that from one woman that when she first went into her first computer science class, she asked a question and the professor stopped and looked at her and said, "You should know that by now." But it was like the first class. And so I actually, my wife had the same experience. She took computer a CS 101 or something like that, or a basic class in high school, and all the rest of the kids had already played with it on their Macs at home or something like that, and she was an intro. So I think we need to change this. I think hopefully it's changing, because I think there's less actual personal computers in homes now than there were in the 90s. So I think maybe hopefully it's leveled the playing field, but who knows? I'm glad that my daughter has already taken some Python in school, but this is bad. I mean, software is not a boys or girls thing. If anything, the women started it, so we're latecomers to the game. Anyway, we need to fix this as a community. So,
Yeah.
the next thing, the other thing I want to share is that
Before we move on, I do want to give just a field report, Brian.
Okay.
So at PyCon, I was speaking to several women, and they said, just talking to each other, something like, there is a very good representation of women at this conference now, and 10 years ago it wasn't like that. And I feel the same way.
That's great.
And it's really encouraging, at least in the Python space. But in general, I agree that the graph is bad, and it doesn't need to be that way.
I also wonder, we get a lot of programmers from other fields, though, not necessarily computer science. So I wonder if maybe we need to, but it does say physical sciences. Maybe we're getting a lot of our women coders from other fields. I don't know.
I do think so. My daughter was learning to do like data sciencey stuff in her psychology field, and psychology I think has more women than men in it, right? And so to the extent that like the data science side brings people in, I think there's a really interesting, Python is super interesting because it brings people in from all these different disciplines, and it's not just unlike, let's say, Go or C, right? That's like a straight path. You start in programming and you end in this location, right? Whereas with Python, it's got a much more diversity of sources, not necessarily people or genders, but like a diversity of different backgrounds that you come from to get into it. So I think that might have something to do with it as well, which is good.
Yeah. Different generational things too. I know we need to move on, but I remember when I was doing teaching at university, having some of the older students come in and not knowing. I was guilty of just expecting a lot of people to know a lot of the basics, know how to do Word or Excel or something like that, and people don't necessarily do that. You can't assume anything really. So yeah. Anyway, I am still working on the audio version of the Lean TDD book, and it's coming along well. But in the process of doing a lot of the audio, I've made some changes to the actual book. That's why I'm holding off on the official release, because I want the audio and the official release to match. But a lot of changes have come in. I published this morning. One of the things is separating out TDD with teams, because team aspects are different. So I both have an emphasis on acceptance tester and development, and then also how to apply those sorts of ATDD stuff to the Lean concept. And I also beefed up the AI chapter to talk about guardrails and security. So just a little bit. Anyway, it's coming along well, and I don't know. Who knows how long it'll take? My original plan was last January, so we'll see. Or January a few months ago. But
congrats! That's awesome.
Thanks. So it's still going. Thanks to everybody that's contributed and helped out. So, all right.
What skill do you need to be an author? Persistence.
Yes. Humbleness.
Yes. Speaking of persistence, our joke is titled "Stop Texting Me." Okay.
Oh, okay. Good.
So it's just a screenshot of a chat conversation. Somebody has Claude in their. They have Claude in their iPhone. I think it's an iPhone. On their messages, right? And it says, Claude, build a $1 billion B2B SaaS platform from scratch. Make no mistake. Then it says red. Dude, for the 1000th time, this is Claude from the Pickleball League. I am not AI.
That's
awesome?
funny.
And then, of course, there's comments. There are definitely comments. So it doesn't. I think I said it this way, but it's not spelled that way. Dude, for the 1000th time, this is Claude. It's not the 1000th time. So someone comments, is it a legal requirement that someone named Claude should be able to spell correctly? And then, yeah, I don't know. It just goes on and on.
This is funny.
Yeah. Anyway, comments are kind of fun too, but yeah, dude, for the 1000th time, this is Claude from the Pickleball League. I am not AI. Building this.
That's funny. I would totally build them a really crappy B2B SaaS and just charge them $1 billion.
That's all right. Yeah.
I can give you $1 billion company. You pay me $1 billion, I'll give you something that earns at least $1. So.
Just because you spend a lot of money building a company doesn't mean it's going to make a lot of money.
Exactly.
There's no guarantees there.
Yeah. But anyway, it's as always, it's fun, and we'll talk to you later.
Yeah. Thanks. Bye.